Today I'll be showing you how I painted a Thousand Suns. I converted this Assault Marine and gave him a Rubric Marine head. It works with the Primaris aesthetic, and of course Thousand Suns have the Egyptian theme. You don't have to do the head swap for every model in your army, but whatever. After a primer gray, we covered a whole figure in Retributor armor. If you have Retributor armor spray, use that instead, but I don't. Then we go back over all the armor with polished gold by Vallejo. Paint all the silver areas in between armor bits and wherever else area you want to be black with whatever black you have. Also, I base coated the stripes on his helmet with rakarth flesh. And we cover all the gold areas with Blood Angel's red. If you have ball red, this might also work better. Either way, we want a metallic red for the Thousand Suns so they don't look like Blood Angels. Paint the stripes on his helmet with deep yellow by Vallejo. Paint the silver with chainmail silver. Paint the other stripes on his helmet with mephiston red. Paint the armor trim and his Aquila with polished gold. Paint his base with dark sand. Very unique to the Thousand Suns, we paint their weapon casings white. I painted his eyes with Prussian blue by Vallejo. If you have Thousand Suns blue by Citadel, use that as a little tribute to their Chaos counterparts from another dimension. Shade the gold in the base with soft tone, dark tone on silver. After a satin varnish, here he is. Now I've painted all the first founding Sanguinary Heresy Marines as Primaris. And how I make Magnus go loyal? Well, it starts out the same with Magnus being the closest to the Emperor. It starts getting different by the Council of Nicaea. And magic is not banned, but it still does get restricted and put over the watch of chaplains for their original purpose and are stated into every legion now. This angers Mortarion, but it really angers Leman Russ, with his paranoia about witchcraft. Not helping is he hears spirits in his head.
Your courage will fail. Your friends will abandon you.
Leman interprets the voices as the spirits and ancestors of Fenris, telling him to be more and more paranoid about magic. Meanwhile, Magnus sees a possible vision of the future, seeing Horus going chaos, so he astral projects and finds himself in Horus's dream. He actually manages, using his magic, to convince Horus and heal him from being stabbed by the demon blade. So Erebus has to go to Sigmas Prime for Plan B with Sanguinius. The spirits of Fenris convince Leman that Magnus and Horus are planning something bad. Russ tells the Emperor, so the spacewol, Sisters of Battles, and Custodes go to Prospero. Due to psychic energy not being completely banned, the Thousand Suns are a little bit stronger, so the Space Wolves have a little bit of a harder time. So another spirit of Fenris convinces Leman that he can just pledge himself to the Ancestor. In exchange, he'll become more powerful than he can ever imagine, and defeat the evil sorcerers. And Russ agrees, and his forces pledge themselves to who turns out to be Khorne. And Russ becomes the Wolfen King. Valdor realizes what's going on and has his troops turn on the Space Wolves, which gives the Thousand Suns enough time to escape into the warp. And the burning of Prospero was all just an elaborate plan by Tzeentch and Khorne to try and turn Leman and Magnus to their sides. But Magnus refuses to pledge himself to Tzeentch. But meanwhile, Corvus Corax is tricked by Tzeentch to pledge himself to him to replenish his troops after the Dropside Massacre, which he does, but they're abominations. And of course Magnus doesn't break the webway. Instead, Dorn does, having demons flood into the Imperial Palace, trapping the Emperor inside, as most of the Custodes were on Fenris. And thanks to warp shenanigans, the Thousand Suns won't re-emerge from it until right at the end of the Siege of Terra. In the post-heresy world, the Thousand Suns were one of the big three of reconstruction and keeping order, and it was Magnus who granted the Sons of Horus Terra. Meanwhile, Lorgar brought Magnus an early attempt at the Codex Astartes, and Magnus agreed to help him write a better version, because Magnus realized that all the legions were incredibly different, and they needed some basis of unification, as well as reducing the numbers of the legions so no one Primarch can have much more power than the other, and to create more forces to defend the Imperium. Ironically, the Thousand Sons differ a little from the Codex Astartes, such as calling their companies fellowships, and of course they're higher than average psychic potential, with even neophytes having a little bit. So of course they have a larger than average librarium, with many sects of magic based off the old cults of Prospero. Ironically, the Thousand Sons had only just a little above 1,000 Marines, so they couldn't participate in the second founding, which angered a lot of other legions, but they got over it. And eventually the Thousand Sons did produce their own successors. But it should also be noted that the Thousand Sons have some of the worst gene seed, with many of the chapters succumbing to the Curse of Flesh, which gets them in trouble with the Inquisition a lot of the time. That, and also Magnus's open disdain for them, and them capturing psychers to use into the Golden Throne. But eventually he goes MIA as he enters the Eye of Terra to get revenge for Lehman sacking Prospero.